The sheer ambition on display here is breathtaking, shifting seamlessly from military conquest to the nuts and bolts of industrial revolution. We follow the chief from critiquing steam engine designs at the Power Research Institute. His impromptu lesson on rotary fans versus bellows was a stroke of genius, to orchestrating political reshuffles in Weishan Prefecture with a quiet dinner and a decisive transfer order. The detailed walkthrough of the increasingly steam-powered mint, from smelting to the satisfying clatter of newly stamped coins, is pure industrial poetry. What truly resonates is this relentless drive for innovation, be it conceptualizing pneumatic drills on the fly or meticulously upgrading coin production. With the Mint-E's steampunk transformation nearly complete and new technologies like air compressors and even locomotives on the drawing board, one can only imagine the monumental leap in capabilities this Han tribe is about to achieve. How will this burgeoning industrial might reshape their world next? After hearing Che Kwan's report, you had a general idea. The entire mint had basically achieved fully mechanized production, operating as if on overdrive. The only parts yet to complete steam-powered transformation were the edge-rolling and embossing steps for the yuan-level silver coins. These two currently still relied on outdated windmill power, which was a bit of a drag. However, the Wen-level copper coins and Jiao-level silver-copper bimetallic coins, which accounted for the largest proportion and most frequent use in the entire monetary system, had all completed their mechanization. The Han tribe's copper coin production had currently reached an astonishing speed of 18,000 coins per hour. This referred to the number of coins, not their face value. In terms of production speed alone, it had already increased more than tenfold compared to the previous windmill-powered machinery. If production continued at this rate, it could definitely meet the market void created by the newly added population, and there would no longer be any worry about not having enough money. Thinking of this, you felt much more at ease. It didn't matter if there were fewer large-denomination silver coins for the time being. Ordinary people didn't use such large denominations often anyway, and loose change was still the most commonly used. In terms of raw materials, thanks to the large quantity of bronze artifacts previously exchanged from Bamboo Island serving as a solid backup, needs could be met for now without worry. In fact, given the current population size and economic volume of the Han tribe, you felt that if all the bronze artifacts exchanged from Bamboo Island were minted into coins, the Han tribe probably wouldn't even be able to use them all. Therefore, after the mechanization was complete, they might have to limit operating hours in the future. Otherwise, printing too much money would also be troublesome. Overall, you were quite satisfied with this inspection. Clearly, the heads of the Mint and the Power Research Institute understood the priorities, placing the transformation of small denomination copper coins first. This allowed the Mint to produce a large amount of currency in a short period, which greatly reassured you. Finally, Che Kwan led you to the Mint's warehouse. The wooden boxes used to hold coins were already stacked halfway up the warehouse, gleaming gold and shimmering silver, practically blinding your eyes. Seeing such abundant currency reserves, you were so happy you couldn't close your mouth, and immediately said to the guard captain beside you, "Start arranging for transport tomorrow. The sooner this currency reaches the south, the better. It will take a month or two on the road anyway, and by the time it arrives, the battle on Bamboo Island should be almost over, just in time to be useful." "Yes, Chief," the guard captain replied. "However, should this currency be transported directly to the envoy on Bamboo Island, or should it be sent to Tuohai Prefecture first?" "Of course to Tuohai Prefecture," you said without hesitation. "It's not far from Tuohai Prefecture to Bamboo Island anyway, a week's voyage at most. If Bamboo Island needs it, they can just requisition it from Tuohai Prefecture. It's convenient and quick. Moreover, the Tang tribe now has many collaborations with Tuohai Prefecture, including the promotion of currency. Therefore, the Tang tribe also needs a very large amount. Just send it to Tuohai Prefecture and let them handle the unified distribution. It'll save trouble." "Understood. I'll go arrange for ships in a moment." The guard captain accepted this task and then asked about the next leg of the journey. "So, Chief, Are we heading back now, or shall we go see the Comprehensive Research Institute? You walked to the warehouse entrance and looked up at the sky. They had set out early today, and now, after inspecting the mint, it wasn't even lunchtime yet. You hadn't been to the Comprehensive Research Institute for almost a year, and were actually a little concerned about it. So, after a brief moment of thought, you made a decision. Let's go to the Research Institute. We'll have lunch at the Institute today. All right, I'll go arrange for ships right now. The guard captain agreed and turned to find the captain of the ship that had brought them, moving with remarkable efficiency. Chief, are you not eating at the mint today? Quan looked at you eagerly, somewhat reluctant to see you go. He hadn't seen the chief in a long time either. Or rather, since the mint moved to Lakehart Island, you hadn't visited at all. Now that you were finally here, he naturally didn't want you to leave so quickly and wanted to get closer to you. Unfortunately, you still had many things to attend to and time was precious, so you directly declined Quan's attempt to keep you. No, your work is too busy. I won't disturb you here. You shook your head and, while walking out, didn't forget to earnestly advise, the South still needs a large amount of currency. Hurry up with the modifications and do a good job with production. Especially now that it's steam-powered, be sure to educate the workers on safety awareness. Our medical and health conditions are poor. It's best not to get injured if it can be avoided. Tell everyone to be careful and put safety first when working. Yes, thank you for your concern, Chief. We will definitely pay attention to safety and step up production. Please rest assured, Chief. Quan escorted you all the way to the open space at the docks before reluctantly bidding you farewell with a cupped hand salute. Your group quickly boarded the ship again and, without stopping, headed to the Comprehensive Research Institute with remarkable efficiency. The Comprehensive Research Institute was also located on an island in the lake, with an environment similar to the mint, backed by a swamp and facing the lake. Such a location was not only convenient for water transport, but also facilitated the discharge of various heavy metal chemical substances, preventing these toxic materials from being discharged outside the swamp and polluting the environment elsewhere. After all, given the Han tribe's current technological level, only swamps possessed the natural ability to degrade heavy metals. This was the Han tribe's only current method for dealing with industrial pollution. Although a bit primitive, it was better than nothing. The Research Institute and the mint were not very far apart, and water transportation was also relatively convenient, so it only took a little over half an hour for your group to smoothly arrive at the Comprehensive Research Institute's docks. Just as the group set foot on the dock, a melodious bell chimed from the island. Hearing it, you couldn't help but laugh. Ha ha, our timing is perfect. We can just manage to scrounge a meal. Lucky us. As you were speaking, the researchers who had just finished their lunch break and were emerging from various laboratories also spotted the group that had suddenly appeared at the docks. You, at the head of the group, dressed in an elegant black brocade robe and wearing a hollowed-out filigree gold crown, stood out conspicuously in the crowd, practically a walking spotlight. Those sharp-eyed researchers recognized your identity at a glance. Chief, why are you here? A young man named Ao Fei with the sharpest eyes spotted you and Ku Bing by your side immediately. He instantly darted over like a rabbit, his face filled with pleasant surprise. When the other researchers nearby heard this, oh dear. The chief had actually graced them with his presence. They too hurriedly rushed over to greet you, and the scene became somewhat chaotic for a moment. Greetings, Chief. Paying respects to the chief. Salutations to the chief. Wen Nong, the head of the chemistry group, also hurried over with a group of researchers, panting. Afraid of slighting you, the supreme leader of the tribe. You smiled and waved at them, saying amiably, Good, you are all well. No need for formalities, no need for formalities. Ao Fei had already taken the lead and arrived before you. He first cupped his hands in a proper greeting, and then eagerly asked, Chief, why have you suddenly come in person? Is there another major project to assign to us? Tell us quickly, we can't wait. Upon hearing this, everyone pricked up their ears, their eyes sparkling with anticipation. That's right, usually only when there was a particularly important project to be assigned. and the chief felt they might not be confident enough on their own. Would he deign to come personally to provide guidance? This was a rare opportunity. However, this time you were truly here for an inspection and to scrounge a meal. Although there was a small project concerning rubber air hoses to assign to them, it wasn't a particularly major project, nor was it technically complex. Given the current professional capabilities of the rubber research team, making a low-tech air hose would, at most, require a few more experiments. A piece of cake. There is a small project related to rubber, and it has nothing to do with your optics group, so don't be nervous, you said with a smile, calming everyone's excited mood. I just came to see you all this time, to inspect everyone's work situation recently, and to give everyone a boost of encouragement. So that's how it is. That's great. When Ao Fei heard it wasn't his concern, he wasn't disheartened. Instead, he became even more excited, rubbing his hands together and saying, "Chief, we happen to have many questions we want to ask you. You've finally come." It was unclear whether the entry barrier for optics was too low, or if Ao Fei's luck was just too good. He was like a man blessed by the goddess of fortune. After researching various basic optical theories and successfully developing the camera with Ku Bing, this young man had recently made another significant discovery and invention. It was just that due to his limited perspective, he was unsure about the actual use of his new creation and in which direction it should be developed. He was completely bewildered. But now it was all right, you were here. None of that was a problem anymore. With the chief around, nothing was an issue. Asking questions is fine, you said, smiling at the group of top talents of the Han tribe before you, and pointed towards the distant cafeteria. But I just heard your dining hall bell ring, and my stomach is rumbling too. I haven't eaten yet. How about it? Can you treat me to a meal first, and then we can ask questions slowly? Ao Fei's mouth dropped open, and Hiao Nao Di raised his hand to gently slap himself, his face full of apology. Chief, look at me. I was so excited to see you that I forgot about eating. I deserve a beating. I deserve a beating. Let's go, let's go. Although we all eat using the tribe's money, this meal must be on us. This is a meal from us disciples to our esteemed teacher, a thank you teacher meal. Please, Chief, don't refuse. This kid, he sure knew how to talk. It was rare for you to deign to visit the research institute, so this meal truly became their treat. Even if they didn't want to treat you, they had no choice. The Lakeheart Island cafeteria prepared a fixed amount of food every day. Although the Han tribe no longer lacked food, the common people had all come from the hard days of going hungry during the tribal era, so their frugal nature had not been lost, and extravagance was frowned upon. They usually cooked just enough for what was needed. With your group's sudden arrival, the cafeteria was unprepared, so they had to have the cook add dishes at the last minute. Fortunately, there was no shortage of ingredients here. The island itself raised chickens, ducks, and rabbits. A sumptuous meal was quickly served. Unfortunately, there weren't many decent vegetables. In this era without greenhouses, wanting to eat fresh vegetables in the northern winter was indeed a luxurious wish. Having some pickled mustard tubers was already good. The leaders of several research groups had the honor of dining at the same table as you, each of them as excited as if they'd been injected with chicken blood, their faces flushed. Ku Bing also sat beside you, and on his other side was the sharp-eyed Ao Fei. Due to their joint design of the camera, the two had now become good buddies, often getting together to tinker with new gadgets. While waiting for the cook to serve the dishes, the group began to chat enthusiastically. Chief, Ao Fei was the first to burst, pulling out an album and print photo from his pocket and presenting it to you like a treasure. I've recently made a new discovery, but I don't know if it has any research value. If it truly is valuable, in which direction should it be developed in the future? Please give me your comments and guidance. The image on the photo was strange, showing a blurry circle of light, and inside it, a shadowy mass that seemed to be moving, very indistinct, making it impossible to tell what it was. However, it was certain that this central shadow was also translucent, as the color in the center of the shadow was lighter. To be honest, this black and white photo could only capture the general outline of something, Expecting high resolution was impossible. It looked like it had been pixelated. What on earth is this a picture of? You studied the photo for a long time but couldn't make head or tail of it, completely baffled. Seeing this, Ku Bing curiously took the photo and also looked at it from left to right, but couldn't figure anything out either. Reporting to Chief, Ao Fei explained when he heard your question. This is a drop of water that accidentally dripped from a tree onto the lens when I was testing a new lens outdoors. I've looked at it. This water droplet is definitely completely transparent, at least to the naked eye. It's very clear. But this photo taken through the lens shows that there's actually a moving shadow inside the water droplet. But when I look at it with my naked eye, there's really nothing there. Tell me, what on earth is this thing in the water? You're saying this circle of light is that water droplet, and this shadow inside is that moving thing, and it's invisible to the naked eye. Ku Bing, holding the photo, asked in astonishment on the spot, his eyes wide. That's right, precisely, Brother Ku Bing. Do you have any brilliant insights? Seeing Ku Bing's interest, Ao Fei casually asked, wanting to hear his opinion. What brilliant insights could I have? Ku Bing scratched his head, looking bewildered. Invisible to the naked eye, but can be captured by a camera. What does that mean? I can't figure it out. He paused and cast a pleading look at you. The Chief must know. Chief, can you analyze it for us? What exactly is going on? Ku Bing was now fully in research mode, his curiosity piqued. Just then, the cook from the cafeteria happened to walk over with a steaming plate of fragrant braised pork. You picked up your chopsticks, put a piece of meat with a good mix of fat and lean into your mouth, and said slowly while eating, "What's so strange about this? Analyzed from a scientific perspective, your lens is nothing more than a magnifying glass, invisible to the naked eye, but you saw it through the lens. What does that mean? It means this thing is extremely tiny. Our eyes simply can't see it. Only by continuously increasing the magnification can its existence be perceived. And you just said this thing moves, so I judge it should be a living thing. Looking at this photo again, the blurry trail behind this shadow, it looks like it's swimming in the water droplet, quite merrily too. Thus, a preliminary conclusion can be drawn. Through a magnifying glass, you saw a miniature living creature, imperceptible to the naked eye, but capable of swimming in a water droplet. Let's just call it a microorganism for short. You pondered for a moment and gave this newly discovered thing a simple and clear name. Microorganism? Everyone at the table was startled simultaneously, muttering this slightly awkward new term you had just coined, their faces filled with disbelief. Does the Chief mean that there are microorganisms in this world that are invisible to our naked eye, living alongside us in the same world? Then, are they good things or bad things? Wen Nong from the chemistry group next to you was the first to raise a very objective question. As expected of a researcher, his thinking was meticulous. Research should be like this: constantly raising questions, boldly hypothesizing, then conducting rigorous experiments for verification, and finally drawing universally applicable conclusions. This is the basic process of scientific research. Therefore, raising questions is the most important first step. You nodded in approval. Of course, he knew about the existence of microorganisms and that they could be good or bad, but he couldn't say it directly. Instead, he had to guide these people to research it themselves and turn it into a specialized science. So, he continued, whether microorganisms exist or not, that was just a hypothesis I made earlier. Isn't there Ao Fei's photo as evidence? If we don't use the microorganism hypothesis to explain it, then what do you say it is? So we are all still unable to make a correct verification. We are all still at the stage of analysis and hypothesis. Assuming Ao Fei's photo is indeed of a microorganism, and microorganisms are real, then we shouldn't rush to conclusions, let alone use narrow emotional ideas like good or bad to draw conclusions. Take living things, for example. If there are microorganisms, then naturally there are macroscopic organisms. You can understand them as living things we can see with the naked eye, such as birds, and beasts, flowers, birds, fish, and insects, as well as trees and crops, and so on. Anything that can grow naturally and be observed by the naked eye can be included in the category of living things. But can you clearly say whether living things are good or bad? You can't. The words good or bad should not appear in scientific verification. We should be more concerned with whether they are useful to us. Everything has two sides. If there is a good side, there is naturally a bad side. Our scientific research is a process of seeking truth, and our final achievement is to use the technology we research to make various materials useful to us. Who can say that microorganisms are definitely useless to us? As you spoke, everyone nodded thoughtfully. Bold hypotheses, rigorous verification. This had always been the scientific concept you had repeatedly instilled in them, and it was now deeply ingrained in everyone's minds, unforgettable. This time was no exception. Only by looking at problems from a rational perspective could scientific research avoid going astray and deviating from the correct direction. Ao Fei had been silently eating and listening, lost in thought. After you finished this hypothetical conclusion, he eagerly asked again, "Then, Chief, in your opinion, does this microorganism have any research value? If we are to research it, in which direction should we explore?" He was now full of curiosity and anticipation for this new field. You took another bite of food, chewed slowly, and then said unhurriedly, "Of course it has value, and immense value at that. Assuming microorganisms truly exist in this world, what does that represent? It means it's a new world we've never seen before. Its significance is profound, potentially even changing our understanding of the entire world. If we can open the door to this new world and gain a deep understanding of it, there will definitely be enormous rewards, perhaps even beyond our imagination. Let's take living things as an example again. Look at the food on this table. Grain is a plant that can grow, also a type of living thing. We've mastered its cultivation methods, allowing our people to eat their fill and no longer suffer from hunger and cold. These chickens, ducks, and other poultry, we've mastered their habits so we can raise them on a large scale, providing us with delicious meat and a large quantity of eggs, improving our lives. Even this table, isn't it furniture made from wood, a biological material? So many living things can be used by us, greatly improving our quality of life. Think carefully. If we could see the world of microorganisms and also make these microorganisms serve us, what earth-shattering changes could that bring to our lives? Therefore, this research is valuable, and its value is enormous. It cannot be underestimated. Here, based on the characteristics of living things, we can raise a few questions which will be our future research directions. How many types of microorganisms are there? What strange shapes do they have? How do they grow and move? How do they reproduce? What impact do they have on the environment we share? What role do they play in the entire ecosystem? What functions do they serve? These are all directions we need to strive to explore and research in the future. And to research these, we must meet a most basic prerequisite, which is, how exactly can we clearly see microorganisms? This arduous task, Ao Fei, will fall on your shoulders. We just defined microorganisms as extremely tiny living things, unobservable by the naked eye, visible only with a magnifying glass. So what you need to do is to create an ultra-high magnification magnifying glass, one that allows us to clearly see microorganisms through it. It must be able to magnify the size of microorganisms thousands, even tens of thousands of times. In short, achieve the highest magnification possible. Don't be afraid of spending money. Don't be afraid of failure. To distinguish it from ordinary magnifying glasses, and also to highlight its uniqueness and specialized use, I'll give it a special name here. Microscope. Xianwei Jing. A magnifying glass capable of revealing microorganisms. Microscope for short. The microscope is the key for us humans to unlock the mysterious treasure trove of the microbial world. Its significance is paramount. If your color camera isn't making any new progress, you can focus your research in this direction for now. You might achieve unexpected results. The group at the table was stunned, each of them dumbfounded, their jaws nearly hitting the floor. They had never imagined that this seemingly accidental discovery would be taken so seriously by the chief and elevated to such an important strategic level. However, when it came to the final microscope, everyone couldn't help but feel their scalps tingle and their hearts pound. Good heavens, with a single word, you, esteemed sir, wanted to magnify objects thousands or tens of thousands of times. And what was the current level of lens technology in the Han tribe? It was practically primitive. Common monocular telescopes only had a magnification of 10 to 40 times. The largest aperture astronomical telescopes could only magnify up to 600 times. And you, with one pronouncement, were talking about thousands or tens of thousands of times. Even assuming the minimum of 1,000 times, that would require doubling the magnification of the current most powerful astronomical telescope. The difficulty was simply harder than ascending to heaven. Seeing Ao Fei's jaw agape and his troubled expression, you couldn't help but smile. You reached out and patted his shoulder, comforting him gently. Don't be afraid of how difficult it is. Relax a little. Actually, the technology of this microscope and the telescope aren't too different in principle. It's just that one is for observing distant scenery, and the other is for observing tiny creatures. Let me give you a hint. Microorganisms are definitely extremely small, so you don't need to run around looking at them with a microscope. That would be inconvenient. Just like this photo you took earlier, perhaps it exists quietly in a tiny drop of water. So you need a stable base and stand. Then a stage needs to be mounted on it to place the observation sample. You'll also need a condenser, a reflector, and so on, to provide sufficient light for observation. Finally, place an ultra-high magnification telescope that can aim at the stage on top, and that should be about it. Isn't the principle very simple? Moreover, this microscope must not be made too large. It should be small and exquisite. This shouldn't be a major problem, because you should understand that a telescope's magnification is not necessarily directly related to its aperture size, but mainly relies on focal length and lens combinations to achieve magnification. So go for it. I have faith in you. I believe you can do it. I believe you will definitely be able to create this golden key for our Han tribe to open the door to a new world. You looked at him with eyes full of encouragement and trust, giving him immense confidence and motivation. A simple working meal, amidst heated discussion, finalized a brand new scientific research project. This greatly stimulated the researchers from other groups. There was no helping it. The optics group had simply produced too many major achievements recently, as if they were cheating. First the groundbreaking telescope, then the camera that swept the tribe, and now they were about to start working on some key to a new world. If they managed to succeed with this too, wouldn't that be incredible? These were all major accomplishments. As for other groups like the rubber group and the chemistry group, they spent their days either researching basic materials or improving production processes, doing the work of unsung heroes. Although they also had many achievements, none could compare to the immense impact of the camera. No matter how skilled you were at mining and ore dressing, or how high your metallurgical efficiency, the ordinary farming folk couldn't see it. Now, even the steam engines from the Power Research Institute were more famous than them. How could this not make people angry? It was simply intolerable. However, basic materials science was of paramount importance, the cornerstone of all technological development. Others might not understand this principle, but you knew it as clearly as if looking in a mirror. Therefore, providing ideological guidance to these silently dedicated researchers was also one of your inescapable duties as chief. You glanced around at the expressions of envy mixed with a hint of unwillingness on the faces of those around you, then spoke with a smile. I know everyone is eager to achieve merits and hopes to, like the optics team, develop some brilliant technological achievement, to become famous in the tribe and bring honor to your ancestors. However, in my heart, basic materials are the cornerstone of all technology, the foundation upon which a 10,000-story building rises from flat ground. Without the diligent efforts of your rubber group, we wouldn't be able to create advanced machinery and tools, nor would we have more efficient and durable tires. Without the round-the-clock research of your chemistry group, we wouldn't be able to produce such advanced weapons, nor more superior and tougher steel. The road ahead of us is still long, and steam engines are absolutely the top priority for our future development, the wings for the tribe's ascent. But that cannot be achieved by the Power Research Institute alone. It requires the collective efforts of all the elites in our tribe, working together. Without you who work on basic materials, where would we get the rails capable of supporting heavy locomotives? Without the high-quality rubber materials you provide, where would we get qualified and durable steam engine seals? So everyone just needs to work diligently and set your minds at ease. I see clearly who has contributed to the tribe's development. I have a good account of it in my heart. You won't be shortchanged a single bit of the credit you deserve. The honor due to you will absolutely not escape you. As long as the Research Institute can produce results, bonuses, titles of nobility, I will not delay a single cent, and I mean what I say. Also, there's one more thing to inform everyone. Our Han tribe's population is growing, and scientific research is gradually getting on the right track, flourishing. Therefore, our education system will also undergo major reforms to keep pace with the times. I believe everyone knows that the medical college is compiling medical textbooks, right? In the future, your research achievements will also be compiled into textbooks for various scientific disciplines. Not only will your achievements be included, but your names and your photos will also be clearly printed in the books. I want the future generations of the Han tribe to remember you heroes who have made outstanding contributions to the tribe's development. By then, when the children in the schoolrooms open their brand new textbooks, they will see at a glance, oh, in such and such year of the Han tribe, a certain academician from such and such research institute discovered an important phenomenon and summarized this great law. Let them remember how great and remarkable their ancestors were while they are learning. As soon as your voice fell, a wave of good-natured laughter erupted in the cafeteria, and the atmosphere instantly became lively. Everyone listened with boiling blood, extremely excited. What were they struggling with in their hearts? Wasn't it precisely that their research achievements were unknown and unacknowledged? The optics team's camera had already entered thousands of households. When others took photos, they would have to admiringly exclaim, "This is divine art." Who wouldn't be envious and jealous of that? After all, they had put in no less effort than the optics group, but in terms of honor, they had always lagged far behind, making it hard not to feel a little imbalanced. They genuinely didn't care about DIU, treatment salary issues, because the benefits you provided to the Research Institute had always been the best in the tribe, ensuring they were well fed and clothed. They just wanted to leave a good reputation, to let others know that they too had dedicated their youth and sweat to the tribe's development. And what you said about printing their names and photos in textbooks, that was absolutely the highest level of honor. It would be passed down through the ages, their names recorded in history. Therefore, after receiving this solemn promise from you, everyone finally let go of that little knot in their hearts and laughed happily, their previous minor grievances dissipating. Chief, then if our research topics are so miscellaneous, won't it be difficult to remember if they're compiled into textbooks? Winnong, as the leader of the chemistry group, was also sitting beside you. After hearing your words, he instead felt a little embarrassed, rubbed his nose, and smiled honestly. When assigning credit to the inventors of the camera, Ao Fei, as the main initiator and provider of the principle, was rightfully placed first. Ku Bing also contributed significantly during the R&D process, so he was placed second. Of course, all this was beyond reproach and well-deserved. But he, Wennong, had only provided some related materials and chemical theory support, and had not directly participated in the R&D work throughout the entire process. In the end, his name was added to the end of the list of inventors, which made him feel a bit like he was receiving charity, and he always felt a little awkward about it. But for such a face-gaining, ancestor-honoring matter, he was too embarrassed to refuse. This didn't mean he didn't want to achieve some important results himself, so that he could righteously write his own name in the inventor's position. That would be truly exultant. But now, thinking carefully, What on earth was he working on every day? Messy chemical experiments, producing semi-finished products or chemical reagents that ordinary people couldn't use at all. Even if they were researched, who would know? Even if his name was written in a book, what would be written? He didn't seem to have any representative, presentable scientific achievements. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but feel a little ashamed. That's easy, you laughed heartily. Basic materials science has its own basic materials science projects. In the future, we will definitely publish some specialized books like Fundamentals of Chemistry and Introduction to Biology. At that time, we'll put all the research results you've summarized into them, and then put your names at the front of each volume, saying that these important achievements were all diligently researched by you. Wouldn't that work? It doesn't matter if the common people don't know. As long as the students know, that's enough. Once this generation of young people knows, then future generations will also know. After all, our Han tribe is going to implement universal education. Everyone must learn to read and write. When Nong and the others from the chemistry group grinned foolishly upon hearing this, their hearts blooming with joy. This was great. They would have fame and honor, and even more motivation to work. This group of elites from the Han tribe was cooped up on this isolated island every day, constantly conducting all sorts of tedious and boring experiments. Their lives were extremely monotonous, consisting of nothing but work. They toiled diligently here without complaint, ultimately wanting to gain something. This was human nature, and you understood it very well. Therefore, in areas within your capability, you were willing to satisfy these researchers as much as possible. These were all meritorious officials of the Han tribe, the hope for the tribe's future. After the meal, you toured the research institute again, carefully inspecting the progress of various projects. Aofei's optics group, apart from continuing to improve the camera and delve deeper into optical theory, had no other particularly urgent tasks for the time being. In terms of color photography, the technical difficulty was relatively high, requiring key technological support for 3-color filters and color-developing agents. Filters were relatively simpler. With effort, they should be able to produce them. But those complex chemical reagents for color development could currently only be explored by trial and error, like headless flies, making slow progress. Moreover, Aofei wasn't very knowledgeable about chemistry, so he could only wait eagerly for Wen Nong's chemistry group to achieve results. Rushing wouldn't help. Fortunately, they now had the highly challenging Microscope project, so they finally had work to do for the short term and wouldn't be idle to the point of panic. Wen Nong's chemistry group, on the other hand, was much busier, practically swamped. You had previously supplemented them with some outstanding students from the schools, and now many of them had been trained by the chemistry group into professional explosives production workers. The Han tribe's chemical industry level was extremely limited, and ordinary steam industry was just beginning, let alone those high-precision, cutting-edge chemical plants. That was simply a fantasy. Therefore, to produce double-base propellant and primer for bullets, they could currently only resort to small-batch laboratory production, which was not large-scale and had to follow a route of small quantities produced many times, resulting in low efficiency. However, these experiments were all extremely dangerous, and a slight mishap could lead to an explosion. Thus, these recent graduates, with a certain cultural foundation and strong learning abilities, became the best source of workers. With careful training, as long as they learned the key experimental steps, they could be certified and contribute to the tribe's military-industrial endeavors. As for the rubber group, they were still continuously conducting various basic experiments, exploring how to transform raw latex into various industrial products with different properties. For example, under different catalysts and conditions, what characteristics would the finished rubber exhibit? Would it be more wear-resistant, more elastic, or more resistant to high temperatures? To understand these complex problems, without various advanced electronic testing equipment and powerful computers for analysis and calculation, they could only use the most rudimentary method, elimination. That meant trying things one by one, recording data, analyzing results, until the most suitable formula and process were found. This required immense patience and perseverance. It had been nearly half a year since you painstakingly brought back the first batch of raw latex from the Tang tribe. The rubber group had already conducted several thousand various experiments with these precious raw materials. This was definitely the department with the largest workload in the entire research institute, and the one with the least visible short-term results. However, with the assurances and promises you made during lunch, the researchers in the rubber group were now all in high spirits, their work enthusiasm unprecedentedly high, full of vigor. You also spent a considerable amount of time here, and together with the researchers from the rubber group, carefully selected several experimental products that looked quite promising. Then you had them trial-produce high-pressure air hoses according to these different formulas to test the effects first. As for the detailed design parameters, you would let them coordinate and communicate with the Power Research Institute themselves after you returned. Finally, before leaving, you assigned an extremely important long-term research project to the chemistry group. You said solemnly to Wen Nong, "After the start of the steam industry, our demand for various higher-performance alloy steels will become increasingly heavy and urgent. So I am now assigning you another very important long-term task. You need to set up a dedicated subgroup within your team responsible for analyzing the specific composition of metal ores from various parts of the Han tribe, and then attempt to purify and smelt them. More importantly, you need to systematically test and identify the various properties of alloy steels with different proportions. For example, which alloy steel has higher bending resistance? Which alloy steel has greater ductility? Which one is more resistant to high and low temperatures, and hardness comparisons, pressure-bearing capacity, and so on. All this important data must be meticulously recorded and compiled into volumes. This work will be very complex and tedious, probably with a workload similar to, or even greater than, that of the rubber group. You must be fully mentally prepared. However, I can tell you clearly that this work is crucial for our future development. Everyone must not slack off in the slightest. You must go all out." "Yes, rest assured, Chief. We will definitely complete the mission successfully," Wen Nong replied resolutely, his tone full of confidence and determination. "If it really comes to it, we can divide into several sub-teams within the group and take turns. Difficulty is not a problem. If there were no difficulty, what would we be needed for? Chief, don't worry. We will definitely not hold back the tribe's development." I have faith in you. Work hard." You patted Wen Nong's shoulder with satisfaction, and then left the research institute with your group of personal guards, content. On the way back, you were still silently pondering matters. The rapid development of modern science and industry inevitably led to a large number of specialized scientific disciplines. After all, a person's energy is limited, and it's truly impossible to be proficient in everything and cover all aspects. Now that the optics group had begun to develop the microscope, should you start planning to establish a third research institute? One specifically for biological research, covering zoology, botany, microbiology, and so on. After all, among the current scientific disciplines in the Han tribe, there was no systematic specialization specifically for biology yet. This seemed like a good idea. Given the Han tribe's current resources, establishing a new biological research institute wasn't an insurmountable task. Venue? There were plenty. Just demarcate a piece of land. As for personnel, drawing some who understood agriculture from the Ministry of Agriculture and some who understood pharmacology from the medical college to temporarily form a makeshift team wouldn't be a problem. The rest would have to rely on themselves to feel their way across the river and study slowly. Even if the Han tribe had a biological research institute, at this stage, it could only focus on more basic fields like animal and plant science and biomedical technology. Those overly advanced high-tech things were currently unattainable, not even worth thinking about. But as long as a good start was made, perhaps within your lifetime, you might even see the birth of antibiotics, and that would be truly incredible. However, it was still a bit early to think about these things. One must eat one bite at a time and walk one step at a time. The immediate priority was to sort out the current battle situation on Bamboo Island. After returning to Hanyang City, you issued multiple orders without pause. Besides continuing to transport shining silver and clinking copper coins to Tuohai Prefecture, large quantities of civilian goods were also to be sent. Food, clothing, daily necessities, everything imaginable. This was all to stimulate the economies of Bamboo Island and the Tang tribe, giving them a shot in the arm. First, flood the market with a large amount of currency to create an illusion of prosperity, then carry out large-scale dumping of goods. This way, the local economy could be forcibly stimulated in a short period. The Han tribe had now basically brought Bamboo Island and the Tang tribe firmly under control, and a portion of the grasslands was also now under its sway. Essentially, the populations within the explored territories had all been incorporated. While this seemed like a good thing, the population had clearly grown and the tribe's strength had increased. It also brought a new problem. It reduced the Han tribe's market for foreign trade. Previously, doing business with Bamboo Island was called foreign trade. The Han tribe could find all sorts of ways to earn their money, fleecing them dry. But this would no longer be possible in the future. They were all family now. How could one be so ruthless? Having lost its foreign trade partners, the Han tribe's economy might stagnate. Therefore, to continue maintaining good economic growth, the only option was to shift from exports to domestic sales, vigorously stimulating domestic consumption, to allow the economy to recover and regain vitality. Although Bamboo Island had not yet officially come under the Han tribe's jurisdiction, you had already keenly perceived this potential hidden danger. Therefore, the next key focus was to find every possible way to develop various civilian goods, raise the overall income level of the populace, and ensure that the common people had surplus money, thereby promoting their enthusiasm for consumption, making them dare to spend and willing to spend. In a nutshell, the currency must flow. Otherwise, the mountains of gold and silver piled up there would just be a heap of cold metal, having lost its proper value. As the chief, although you weren't personally on the front lines of battle, you were deeply concerned about the future development of Bamboo Island. Meanwhile, the soldiers who were actually fighting and bleeding on the front lines encountered a not-so-small problem. Although in the previous D-Day battle, the Han army with overwhelming force had basically annihilated the Xin Tribe's two elite frontline corps, routing them completely. Some remnants and stragglers had inevitably escaped, or perhaps nearby civilians had reported this earth-shattering news to the Xin Tribe. Consequently, the surprise attack tactic in the original bloody slaughter plan was declared a failure. The means by which the intelligence was leaked could no longer be investigated, and assigning blame was pointless. But it was now certain that the Xin Tribe's high command knew the cruel fact that the Han army had landed on Bamboo Island and already occupied half their land. The Xin Tribe's reaction speed was quite fast, or perhaps seeing their two most elite corps completely wiped out by the Han tribe in just one day, like autumn winds sweeping away fallen leaves, had made them somewhat fearful, their livers trembling. As for what choice they would make after being frightened, there were only two possibilities. Either choose to slip away, making a run for it to avoid a direct confrontation with the wolf-like Han army, or make a desperate, all-or-nothing gamble, concentrating all their resources to fight a life-or-death decisive battle with the Han tribe, fighting to the bitter end. But the outcome was very clear. The Han tribe would absolutely not give them a chance to escape calmly. Want to run? Not a chance. Just as the Eagle Wing Guard, Leopard Strategy Guard, and Valiant Cavalry Guard, the three guard divisions, entered their designated garrison areas, Xue Tu simultaneously dispatched a large number of scouts like scattering beans to reconnoiter the next target area. Judging by the current position and marching speed, Xue Tu had set the Han army's next target as Xianfeng Prefecture, the long, narrow coastal area directly north of Bamboo Island. This was the Xin tribe's vital sea salt production base, and its importance, whether to the Han tribe or the Xin tribe, was self-evident, a veritable lifeline. Xue Tu was sharpening his knives, eager to seize the salt pond resources here and control the Xin tribe's economic lifeline. However, what Xin Tongling, the leader of the Xin Tribe, wanted most right now was how to save his own skin. Salt? He couldn't be bothered with it anymore. He only knew that his two most capable frontline corps were gone. To withstand the Han tribe's upcoming fierce offensive, he had to find a way to assemble more troops, or he would be finished. Consequently, these high-ranking members of the Xin Tribe brought out the Salt Tribe's scarcest resources, grain and livestock, and lavishly recruited them to join their ranks. They also did their utmost to vilify the true nature of the Han army, portraying them as invaders who killed children on sight, seized women, captured men as slaves, and committed all sorts of atrocities like burning, killing, and looting. Moreover, they found some over-the-top actors to play Bai Xing common people who had supposedly escaped from the so-called occupied territories, crying and wailing before the crowds, accusing the Han army of various heinous crimes and inciting hatred. The men, women, old and young of the Salt Tribe were instantly thrown into a panic, their hearts filled with anxiety. On the one hand, the grain and livestock offered by Xin Tongling were a huge temptation. After all, no one would turn down food. On the other hand, they genuinely felt the threat and pressure from the Han tribe, terrified that they too would suffer a fate of family destruction and personal ruin. Ultimately, the entire Salt Tribe, half willingly and half coerced, joined Xin Tongling's forces, volunteering to resist the Han tribe's brutal offensive alongside the Xin tribe's high command. According to Xin Tongling, the Han tribe is attacking. If we don't unite and resist together, none of us will survive in the end. Rather than wait to die meekly, it's better for everyone to gather and find a way to live. Unity is strength. And so, the Salt Tribe, having been thoroughly bamboozled, began a massive tribe-wide migration, bringing their families, driving their cattle and sheep, and moving towards Xin Tongling's territory. The scale and speed of the migration could almost be described as scorched earth. Wherever they passed, not a blade of grass was left. When the first batch of scouts sent by Xue Tu arrived at Xianfeng Prefecture, travel-worn and weary, they only saw the ravaged remains of villages. The reason they were called remains was that not a single person was left in those villages. Not even a chicken, dog, cow, or sheep remained. Even many of the houses and mountains of corn stalks and similar things had been burned to the ground, leaving only scorched earth. Village after village, once bustling with cooking smoke, had basically been burned to a white wasteland, a shocking sight. The scouts were all dumbfounded, completely unaware of what earth-shattering event had occurred here. However, being professional reconnaissance personnel, they soon discovered clear traces of a large contingent of people having marched through the burned villages. Judging by the direction of the tracks, it was easy to determine where the villagers had gone. And that direction was precisely the Xin tribe's main base, what the Han tribe referred to as the Jiahai Prefecture direction. Encountering such an abnormal major event, the scouts dared not delay in the slightest, and immediately dispatched fast horses to report all these strange findings to their superiors in detail. When Xue Tu received this shocking news, his first reaction was, "Not good, these bastards are trying to run for it." It wasn't his fault for making such a judgment. At this time, Xue Tu had never heard of a tactic called Scorched Earth, so he had no concept of it. Hearing the scouts report that the entire Salt Tribe, old and young, was moving towards Jiahai Prefecture, Xue Tu's first thought was, Xin Tongling and that group of Xin Tribe high officials must be scared. They want to concentrate all their population and resources and then flee Bamboo Island. So where could they flee from Bamboo Island? This was clearly a very simple question. The Xin Tribe's high command had no ships, so even if they wanted to run, they could only cross the Great Bridge at the hidden land bridge and flee towards the vast grasslands. Therefore, after deducing this intention of the Xin Tribe's high command, Xue Tu immediately contacted Shu Da, the commander of the Fubo Guard, and urgently requested their assistance in blockading the hidden bridge at the northwestern end of Bamboo Island to ensure that not a single person from the Xin Tribe could escape to the grasslands, aiming to catch them like turtles in a jar. At the same time, this fellow also sent a request to the local garrisons of the 3 Honghu prefectures to assist in blockading the Bamboo Island hidden bridge. However, The troops of these three prefectures were not under Xue Tu's command, so in his letter, he could only politely request them to prepare to break camp first. Then, he sent you an earnestly worded letter by fast horse, urging you to quickly issue an order commanding the garrisons of the three Honghu prefectures to assist him in completing the total blockade of Bamboo Island. However, while Xue Tu was busy here, mobilizing troops and deploying forces, the Xin Tribe had no intention of fleeing at all, or rather, they might have considered running. But because they had no ships and the grasslands were effectively under Han tribe control, they had no confidence they could successfully escape once they reached the mainland. So what the Xin Tribe actually did was to gather all their resources and engage the Han tribe in a war of attrition, using scorched earth and staunch defense tactics, preparing to fight you to the death. This was something Xue Tu absolutely had not expected. It was completely beyond his calculations. Xianfeng Prefecture had now become a depopulated, ravaged wasteland. Xue Tu naturally wouldn't be idle either. With the simple thought of, if you don't want this land, I do, he directly led the forces of the remaining 4 guard divisions and advanced imposingly to the edge of Jiahai Prefecture, adopting a stance as if ready for a decisive battle. Moreover, he did not detach the Seawolf Guard, which was originally supposed to defend Xianfeng Prefecture, to garrison the area. Instead, he had them move with his main army. There wasn't even a shadow of a person left in Xianfeng Prefecture now, so what was the point of the Seawolf Guard defending it? It was better for everyone to prepare for a grand and spectacular decisive battle together.